Another year gone and we're heading for a new one. Who knows what the future is gonna hold? Trump's re-elected as president, the conflict between Israel and Palestine is still ongoing, and I'm just as depressed as ever. But let's not dwell on what awaits us ahead, and instead dwell on this past year that is 2024. Besides very political events that are way too damaging to talk about, we did get a lot of good things to come out this year. The Olympics had a bunch of viral moments, Twitch streamer Queso won Creator of the Year at the Game Awards,
and the Game Award goes to EA Sports.
Kendrick bodied Drake with a ton of diss tracks. My favorite band, 21 Pilots, brought out a return to form album that was Clancy. Heck, music in general was poppin' this year, so many good albums and songs alike. Movies on the other hand, they were a bit lacking. Maybe because I haven't really been watching that many movies this year, but it does seem like less and less people were really recommending anything from the film scene. Most just seemed either lukewarm to disappointing to downright unwatchable, and that's a little sad. But since I'm an animation YouTuber, I can at least say that this was a pretty decent year for animated movies. For the most part, that is. Yeah, 2024 has been a weird year for animation. DreamWorks had a roller coaster ride of movies ranging from good to Megamind Doom Syndicate. Disney and Pixar came out with back-to-back sequels from beloved films that were either a box office success or an uninspired TV special promotion. And of course, there's always the overlooked foreign films that seem to be the diamond in the rough above all the big corporate slop that major studios bring out. And I think this is the perfect time to rank all the animated films that came out this year and see which ones were garbage and what stands up on top. Now, granted, I haven't seen every animated film out there, that would be too much of a task to bring all that together. Plus, there are some big name films that still haven't come out yet that are either getting limited releases to theaters at the end of December or being pushed to the very beginning of January. So, films like the Looney Tunes movie, The Day the Earth Blew Up, or the Wallace and Gromit movie, Vengeance Most Foul, will not be on this list. Also, there have been a few films that debuted in 2023 that later crossed overseas into this year that I will be including on this list, as long as I haven't already seen them. So, although I've already seen Robot Dreams and would probably consider that a 2023 film, I have not seen Chicken for Linda, which also came out last year, and will be including it on this list. And, just in case you were wondering, Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate will not be on this list. I know a lot of people would consider it, but since it's technically a pilot for a TV series on Peacock, I'm not gonna count it. Phew, another week of avoiding this lightweight garbage heap of a movie. So, that leaves 23 animated films that I will be ranking. So, grab your popcorn and beverages, and let's take a deep dive into these animated films, from the bad to the good and somewhere in between.
You're killing me, SpongeBob. You really are.
Hey, remember when this whole movie got leaked online? It's a good thing I watched it for free on the internet and not on some greedy streaming service with overpriced subscriptions. And honestly, that's kind of what this film feels like. It certainly doesn't feel like this belongs on Netflix whatsoever. Actually, I take that back. Netflix is known for putting out malarkey on their site, so this fits right in. My goodness, how could you turn a SpongeBob movie this horrible? I have my gripes with the last movie, Sponge on the Run, being predictable and lightweight, but I think the overall 3D style of the movie was at least a little fresh. But here, it seems like even the animation feels really cheap in comparison.
Dude, am I that large? Oh my goodness, there's no way I'm this large!
Boy, they did Sandy really dirty in this movie. The writers clearly have a vision of making the side characters have their own spin-off movies, wanting to flesh out their characters a bit more. And frankly, you could do a lot with Sandy, showing all the different experiments she's created and why she loves science so much, her experience being a karate master and how all that started. But instead, we get another basic SpongeBob plotline when all of Bikini Bottom gets captured and sold as air-breathing pets, with Sandy coming to save the day along with SpongeBob as her sidekick.
Whoa! You never told me you were a flying squirrel!
Okay.
Really, it could have just been another SpongeBob and Patrick Buddy film, so making Sandy the main protagonist just doesn't fit. It's baffling to see that Sandy has been underutilized as a character even in the series for about a decade now, and given the time to shine for her first spin-off movie, it's just wasted potential. You could have done at least something for her, right? Well, we do get a glimpse of her family for the first time. Apparently they're a squirrel circus? That doesn't fit Sandy's character at all. None of these squirrels really stand out at all for being memorable. Well, except maybe Sandy's brother Randy. This guy smuggles illegal nuts in their van. You might want to watch out for this man.
Well, I might have stashed a load of stolen nuts in the back.
Oh hell no!
Honestly, I think the worst part about the spin-off is that it's not even close to being funny compared to the other three. This film has probably the weakest jokes of the franchise, none of them really hit, and I was left feeling unsatisfied. But let's not dwell on the lack of jokes and cram in non-stop in-your-face moments from these characters that really get annoying really fast. And possibly the worst character that fits this bill is our little yellow square man himself. I can understand why some parents, or even people my age, may find SpongeBob irritating at times, with the overdramatic crying, or his annoying laughter, or his inability to shut up at times. But this is cranked up to 11 on this film. The overabundance of SpongeBob here is downright graying to watch, and I can tolerate his overexcitement even in his modern era. But man, SpongeBob is just a huge drag on this film. I would rather be dunked in a lake full of eels than be paired with him. And of course, the live action sequences in this are by far the worst they've ever had. It pretty much seems like a staple at this point to consider some sort of segment live action in a SpongeBob film. Everyone has had it so far. But this is just so ugly. What is this? You're telling me someone greenlit this part and was like, yeah, that seems all about right. Good job guys, the Sandy Cheeks movie is gonna be a success. Ugh, this is so bad. The acting is unbearable, none of them are really trying, it just seems so cringe and not enjoyable. Most of the gags are just boring, and that's just something you don't want to see in a SpongeBob movie. What a waste for Sandy Cheeks, she deserves better honestly. Favorite character is probably Squidward, because it looks like he didn't even want to be in this movie in the first place. That's pretty much typical for him anyway. Hopefully their next spin-off, Plankton, will be a step above the right direction for these films. Wait, you're telling me that this one got leaked too?
It's disgusting!
Round 2 for Skydance Animation, and it's worse than their first film. It's honestly hilarious how much John Lasseter wants to be respected after his little accident in the industry, and trying to get his own studio on the map, trying to compete with his previous companies Pixar and Disney, but could never get to that level of success anymore. With ideas that would work great for the two animated giants coming off as cringe slopfests you would see on Tumblr. You can kind of give a pass to Luck, since that was the studio's first film, but with room to grow in 3 years, it looks like they really didn't accept any criticism or feedback, and put out a very simple Disney wannabe type of film with colorful imagery to distract children from the very mundane plot of this film. And honestly, no one was really hyping this one up anyway. Maybe it was the lack of advertising from Netflix, maybe Rachel Zegler having the lead role turned people away from the film. Heck, John Lasseter in general made people run away from a 50-mile radius. Doesn't help that none of the characters here are really that great too. Both parents are immediately turned into beasts and have to learn to talk and behave like adults again throughout the film, which is just aggravating to watch.
Girl, listen to me talk now. I like the sound of my own voice.
No! God, please, no! No!
Ellen herself doesn't really have any true charm. She's very one-note, as her only focus is to put on her mission of getting her parents back to normal, and when finding out that they just can't be together anymore, turns herself into the negative being her parents once were. I can understand a 10-year-old kid being a little upset by this idea, but Elliot is pretty much a teenager who should know how fights and divorce works. Her parents even try to explain why they can't work as a family anymore with the constant arguing they had, and want to keep loving her separately. She would have some common sense about what her parents turn out to be and let go of these emotions.
What are you supposed to be, a disappointment?
There's also the sense of this character, General Cardona, who wants to get rid of the Beast out of the kingdom until the end of the film when she realizes that the King and Queen were the Beast all along. But like, the King and Queen's advisors should have told her about their transformation in the first place. Why keep a secret around her? Even after they escaped, someone should have told the captain that the Beasts were the King and Queen, and therefore there was no reason to go after them with a vengeance. Not really a huge fan of the songs here either. They were really bargain bin material here, and I'm not a huge fan of the whole theater kid style that they were going for. There were pointless scenes in here too, like this underground rodent cave they entered, barely serving any plot to the story. Favorite characters are probably these two troll guys. They're very gay for each other and saved about 20% of this movie, just for being there.
I traded it in for an upgrade.
What? Why would you do that?
Well, we talked about this.
What is wrong with the 6 wands we already have?
They were taking up the whole coffee table. Though, to be fair, there is that pixie couple we play pinochle with. They're not very magical, though.
They're not very good pinochle players either.
But yeah, Skydance Animation is just turning out to be more and more disappointing with the creative talent they have. Or I guess, lack of creativity. John Lasseter, I suggest you start selling those Hawaiian shirts you always wear, you big creepy boogeyman.
How should I start it? You like jazz?
Even though the mainstream media focuses on animated films around the US, there are a few from different countries that get critical impact and word of mouth from different people. But, to be honest, I've never seen anyone bring up a foreign film on a ranking list that's just mid or downright horrible, unless a lot of people are discussing it. So, let me be the first to introduce you to Captain Avispa. This Spanish-speaking film centers around bees and wasps coexisting together until this evil wasp named decides to take over the colonies, and it's up to Captain Avispa to save the day. Honestly, this movie is about as straightforward as you can get. There's no real impact in the story, most sequences feel predictable, there's really not a lot of emotion or depth. Characters are pretty one-note here as well. Our main hero, Captain Avispa, doesn't really have many characteristics to him other than just being heroic. It doesn't show too much emotion to him, as he just has this blank expressionless grin on his face. The Queen and Princess of the Kingdom are the same as well. Nothing stands them apart from just being royalty. I guess the villain has a little going for him. He shows a little of his trustworthiness towards the Queen in order to get ahead of his takeover of the kingdom, but that's also just basic villain 101 there. I guess this does fit the Latin culture though. A bunch of big name Latin singers and actors provide their voices here, from the likes of Juans and Joy Horta, to even Luis Fonsi as Captain Avispa himself. Mr. Despacito Man, he returns! So yeah, while many Spanish-speaking individuals might enjoy this film a lot more than I will, I think the basic plotline and forgettable characters makes me think that this should be in one of those bargain bins you see at Walmart.
Oh no!
I have some bad news.
Oh, someone got a case of the Mondays.
I hate to promote my previous videos I did earlier this year, but shameful plug aside, I did a whole video on Chris Pratt and his capabilities as a voice actor. I don't think he's that bad by any means, but wish he showed a lot more expression in the characters that he does. And boy, does that fit the bill when it comes to Garfield. This is probably my drop-off point for Pratt's voice work, because this does not work for him. Garfield is a very mundane, lazy cat with a monotone, sarcastic voice that we are all familiar with. But you know what kids really need? An action-packed orange tabby cat on a high-stakes adventure with his new long-lost father.
I apologize in advance. The eating you're about to see will not be pretty.
Look, there's really not much you could do with a Garfield movie. Garfield's personality is very stagnant, so you're not going to get too much material from him. That's why he was always in good use when it came to TV appearances and comics. I don't know why the writers thought putting him in an action spy movie would turn out great, because newsflash, it didn't really turn out great. Garfield has a formula to him, and breaking out of that formula puts him in a weird position. Geez, even the creator thought this was a good idea. Wow, you guys at Sony are doing a real good job making my Garfield an action star. Let's make him jump out of planes and trains and escape a dairy farm. This will definitely get the fans excited.
I failed to see the humor here.
So many boring side characters. I like the Ox, he was probably my favorite character here, but even he had no reason to be here. His relationship with his cow was cute as is, but really, besides just this one part in helping the gang steal some supplies from the farm, he has no purpose. And my goodness, what's with the Samuel L. Jackson cat, Dad? Was anyone actually happy about this? I don't think Garfield enthusiasts were really craving some lore here. No one really cares about Garfield's extended family. I don't think we really care about his deadbeat dad and his sudden care for his son. This whole plan from this cat villain about kidnapping Garfield to lure his dad in was very dumb. I consider this character non-canon as there's no reason to have Garfield with daddy issues. He's Garfield. I don't think he cares. His lord and savior is lasagna. I guess the animation here is fine. Nothing mind-blowing, but it does take a little bit of a comic style like the strips. Odie is very cute. Wish the Ox had more screen time. You could have swapped any big cartoon character here for an action buddy film, and they would work much more than our lazy orange friend here. I don't know what else to say, let's just move on. When Illumination comes around, you know you're either going to get a very mid movie at best, or an unsurprising slop fest at worst. And honestly, I think I just don't care anymore. Illumination has always been the laughingstock of the animation industry, always sticking to their formula of bland storytelling, obnoxious characters, and plots that just go nowhere. And yet, it's still the perfect marketing campaign for families to appeal to, as the studio has racked up billions of dollars on their franchises, with Despicable Me and the Minions to be their biggest IP. So naturally, a fourth movie was going to show up eventually. And while I think it's better than the third installment, that's not really saying much. Look, the first Despicable Me was very good, the best in Illumination's catalog, and I'll even go to say that Despicable Me 2 is a little overhated compared to the previous. but honestly, I think the franchise has become the new Ice Age. Heck, even beyond that, as the demand for producing more Minion-based movies for more profit is exhausting to look at from a consumer standpoint. This has just become a Gru and Minion glaze sesh, as new characters barely have any time to shine or stand out, and previous characters who have been there since day one got pushed out of the spotlight and has reduced to filler at best. What have the girls ever done beyond the first 2 movies? Their gimmicks here are an awkward high schooler who needs to make friends, and the other 2 taking a karate class that had no use of screen time. You could have cut it out. And to make matters worse, let's throw in a new family member in.
This guy!
What the hell is that?
Gru and Lucy got
busy!
Honestly, this is the whole Cousin Oliver situation. Who cares about this baby? While, yes, the baby is a major plot point in the villain Maxine's revenge on Gru, it just feels like Illumination's typical marketing campaign to get people to watch just because of baby Gru. The Minions really serve no purpose here too. The trailers were really pushing them as these superheroes with new abilities, but that was only for a weird segment in the movie to fill time, until they finally show up in the final act for one small scene. There are a few stand-up moments here. I enjoyed this wannabe villain high schooler who looks up to Gru as they go on a high-speed chase to snatch this honey badger. I think Will Ferrell does an excellent job voicing Maxime Lamal, but overall, playing safe and predictable can only get you so far, that even in an Illumination standards, feels like a slap in the face.
Wow, a real tiger! I can't believe you got me a real live tiger!
With so many delays and different producers and directors swapping in and out, you could tell by the development that this film was going to come out with a dying breath of hopelessness. And it is kind of just that. Look, just because it's above Despicable Me 4 doesn't make it a very lukewarm film. It's still disastrously boring.
Boring!
The plot and characters are what we've seen before in other animated films, with no originality. If this film really took 4 to 5 years to make, with different writers helping out on the script, they would have had enough time to work out a decent plotline. But hey, don't take my word for it. A bunch of people who worked on this film left some pretty scathing reviews on Letterboxd after the exposure on how Paramount has treated their animators. Remember guys, animators are just as important, if not more important, than the business executives and directors in the industry. Do not harass and bully your employees by putting in crunch time to meet your quota. I get that the concept is very unique. The Chinese zodiac has each animal act as warriors to protect the guardian, which turns out to be our main protagonist Tom. Tom is your typical bullied student who has a grandmother with magical abilities that passes that on to him, making him the new guardian who has to learn to control his newfound powers. Not a very original story, but it's nice to see some Western media take on the tales and myths of Chinese stories. But of course, in American fashion, dumps it down and keeps it simple, which leads to The Tiger's Apprentice becoming utterly boring. Again, the idea is cool, but take away the Chinese aesthetic to it, and you're left with a very boring Chosen One movie that we've all seen.
We are so excited and happy to announce that a live-action reimagining of Moana is in the works.
You know, Skydance Animation still needs to find their foot on the ground in the industry, but at least they're not too into the game where they can just grab one of their beloved IPs and just make unnecessary cash grab sequels. Where do I begin with Moana 2? This was gonna be a Disney Plus series, but to the surprise of no one, they later modified it to be a feature-length sequel. And you can definitely feel that Disney Plus energy in this movie. It has that very episodic feel that didn't need to be stretched to 90 minutes. Okay, positives. On a technical level, the water physics look realistic, just like the first one. Honestly, I'm surprised Disney hasn't made this worthy of being a theme park experience. Moana and Maui are still the heart of the film too. I can't deny how much their dynamic works. Yeah, that's about it. Look, Disney should have kept this as a series on Disney Plus. Much of the creative talent is in new hands coming from the studios in Vancouver. You know, the actual people working on the Disney Plus series. And let's not excuse the shady business practices Disney has been doing over the years. So of course, crunch time has now been affected on our fallen soldiers. This just feels boring. You can tell they had no idea how to flesh out these new characters on Moana's ship. They would be perfect for a TV series, not a feature-length film. Quick, what does this old grumpy man do in the film? That's right, absolutely nothing. He was chosen to work with Moana because he was a good harvester. He's on a ship in the water. He's pointless. What was the deal with baby Moana here? I get to extend the family for sequels, makes sense for world building, but man, do something with her. Don't make her a side piece like the pig in the first film. You were promoting this movie with her in it. She was like 5 minutes of screen time. Of course, the main reason this got the big screen treatment was because of the recent failures of their newer movies tanking. So when you slap on another sequel to one of your biggest IPs in recent history, you'll know you'll make bank, no matter the quality of the film. And yeah, it exceeded expectations financially. Critically, yeah, Yeah, the animation is still stunning as ever, the songs are okay at best, but not rememberable, and the voice work is still top notch for Moana and Maui, but in the end, this just feels like an episodic Frankenstein monster being stitched up as a full-fledged movie that they're disjointed, and that's sad coming from one of the most inventive studios back then, and seeing the greed that overcame. And oh my gosh, what was that villain? Why did you show him as an unknown force throughout the movie, making him an invisible, unstoppable god wreaking havoc, just to actually show him in the end credits for some reason? Why is Jafrilas here? Why are you trying to build up a third movie? Why Disney? Why?
Yep, you're banned. Skadoosh. Have a good night.
Now, unlike Moana 2, who literally had no one excited for it, Kung Fu Panda 4 actually has a dedicated fanbase, with the whole supposed trilogy being one of the best animated trilogies out there. And hey, if Toy Story can break out and make a 4th installment with some pretty favorable reviews, surely Kung Fu Panda can do the same, right? Right?
This is not working at all.
Well, don't get your hopes up. If you liked everything about the trilogy, whether the lovable cast of characters, the rich storytelling, tons of great gags and jokes, and the emotional maturity that our main character Po faces in every movie, throw that out the window. This movie becomes dumbed down and loses all of its credibility it had going for itself to make this slog of a film. I don't think DreamWorks had any real motives to make this film. It felt as if they were pandering to the fans who wanted another sequel. Poe's characterization throughout this whole movie is reversed from anything he's learned from the previous 2 movies. He goes back to his silly, unintelligent self, which I know that's how he starts out in every beginning of the franchise, but at least that maturity is still in him. Here, it becomes very apparent that everything he's learned is in a different reality, as this Poe does not seem to be the Dragon Warrior we once knew.
Now, the power to open the all-new Dragon Warrior noodles and tofu!
You gotta be kidding me!
You guys like the Furious 5? Because DreamWorks completely forgot about their existence. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll love their new character they've been cooking up. This fox named Zen, voiced by everyone's favorite actress, Awkwafina. And of course, this lazy new villain, the Chameleon, is laughably bad. Every villain prior had a real sense of purpose in their motives. What's the Chameleon's deal? Well, she's small.
I am small.
Makes sense why they had to bring back the 3 better villains in here as lifeless dolls for her shape-shifting. Honestly, this could have been a 20-minute episode from that Panda spin-off show they had. This doesn't feel like a 90-minute feature length, but tries to put in no-nonsense filler with characters not shutting up for half the film. This plotline between Poe's 2 fathers is a nice gesture, but takes up too much time for my convenience. There was so much passion in these last 3 films, and it just seems all gone here. There's barely little artistry given, the choreography action sequences feel underwhelming, Poe's maturity has taken a huge step back from more of its goofiness, and that's saddening to watch through. Probably the most disappointing film on this list. Everyone already understands Illumination's shtick, and Disney using their beloved IPs to make sequels out of them, Moana 2 being their third, and flopping critically is starting to become a trend. But nobody really saw this coming. People were excited for a new sequel to the Kung Fu Panda franchise, and it blowed. This is a baby movie that shows no growth the franchise had, and looking at DreamWorks' next big movie they had under their belts, I wouldn't be too giddy with excitement with how it's going to turn out, despite huge fan reception with just one poster alone. Oh, and of course, the Fox character has her own fan art. Look at that.
Frodo was a dear, dear friend. I like to eat poop. Hey look, it's Gandalf!
You know, the Lord of the Rings franchise is an IP I respect more than I actually enjoy. Like, if someone walked up to me and stated how this franchise means a lot to them, I wouldn't complain. They have a big fantasy fanbase that's still growing, and I do like the first trilogy they have out. Might not be a huge fan, but have a lot of respect towards it. Can't really say too much about the Hobbit trilogy though. Felt like the last 2 films were a slog to watch, especially the last one. But I was very interested to see how this new film Warner was cooking up, with an anime-inspired art style that would help coincide with the story. And I'm kinda glad I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings fan, because I would be heavily disappointed here. First off, the animation here really isn't all that impressive. While it does take inspiration from anime, the visuals, besides the lighting, look bland. And the pacing is just very slow. For a movie that's about 2 hours, it definitely feels more than that. It takes a while for things to start to pick up, and that's not a good thing when we're talking about the Lord of the Rings, you know, for the most part. Also, very die-hard fans will come to know these characters a lot more. This is a spin-off after all, so many recognizable characters like Gandalf, Frodo, and Legolas are not here, but that doesn't really leave room for any kind of impression on these new characters. They all seem one note to me, and I don't really seem to have any attachment to them. This movie seems to lack any imagination that it wants to show, and trust me, if a Lord of the Rings movie doesn't live up to at least a little bit of expectation, fans will know. There has been plenty of outcry about this, disappointing fans, and it's not hard to see why. The beginnings of the world of Lord of the Rings have a lot of potential, and this is not a good way to start things out.
We found a map to Candy Mountain! Candy Mountain, Charlie! Yeah, Charlie!
You know what? I'm gonna say it. This movie is very overhated, and you guys are being a little too mean to it. I actually quite enjoyed this film, to an extent. Look, I think this film plays on the importance of how corrupt the music industry is, and how being true to yourself won't help out in major opportunities, and you have to weasel your way in with lies and facade. Something that Thelma has to do in this movie. Thelma wants to become a famous singer with her bandmates, but doesn't have the wow factor that audiences want. So with accidental pink glitter and a carrot for a horn, and bam, you got a runaway success. I think the main reason this caught my eye was director Jared Hayes, most famously known for Napoleon Dynamite, a very, very quirky comedy, so I thought this would have the same appeal.
Napoleon, don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with babes all day.
Also, this originates from a picture book from the author who has also done The Bad Guys, so really, that's a win-win. And while I don't think this movie really sticks the landing, it does have a lot more going for it than the previous 9 entries we just saw. Like I said, this movie tackles the corruptedness of the music industry. When Thelma becomes mistaken for a unicorn and now gets to live her big dreams as a superstar singer, you definitely see how her life changes dramatically, with luxurious items, huge sold-out records. Heck, there's this bit where her own record studio's name is Huge Sellout Records. There's also this hip-hop horse that the company tries to get him and Thelma into a publicized relationship in order for more sales. Think about all those publicity stunts you see nowadays. And even in the end, when people finally figure out that Thelma isn't actually a unicorn, first reactions were an outrage before acceptance to her true self. I guess one complaint is the overall typecasting here. Jermaine Clement plays this very British talent agent who uses his power to exploit Thelma's new image. Jon Heder, Mr. Napoleon Dynamite himself, still plays the usual dumb comic relief. Surprisingly, Will Forte, a more goofy and zany voice actor, plays a straight man here as Otis the Donkey. Another complaint is the coexistence of animals and humans in this world. Both communicate with each other perfectly, but some of the animals still use their animalistic traits and walking on all 4 legs, while others seem anthropomorphic wearing clothes and such. I feel like the world building is all over the place. But overall, even with the abundance of cliches and weird gimmicks, I still think this film kind of flew under the radar and deserves another rewatch from animation fans. It's definitely not perfect, but I think some people will appreciate the message this movie is trying to give.
We're about to be the first human beings to step foot on Mars.
One of 2 French films on this list, and also one of 2 films that debuted in 2023 before getting its international release in 2024. Not sure a lot of you heard about this film. Mars Express is an animated cyberpunk film about a detective and her android partner who goes on an investigation to find a missing cybernetic student and end up arriving at Nokis, where humans and cyborgs coincide.
I mean, it's alright, like...
This film can get a little confusing with the many twists and turns the plot goes through. The first investigation the duo takes up ends up being a fluke with the suspect's warrant has disappeared, so it felt kind of a waste. I think the android Carlos is probably my favorite character here. Not knowing of his past and how his thoughts and mind are now in a machine, he ends up joining the robots to escape to space. If you definitely like sci-fi films, especially the ones in the animated spectrum, definitely check this one out.
Happy Christmas. It's Christmas. Merry Crisis.
Not a surprise we got another Christmas movie from Netflix, this time from Locksmith Animation. Now look, I don't think any film will come close to what Klaus did back in 2019, mixing styles of 2D and 3D with a beautiful Christmas story about the beginnings of Santa Claus. But I'm willing to give this movie a chance, and it's not that bad of a Christmas film. The plot centers around 3 different stories being told that end up colliding together in the end. We have this kid that only has his mom raising him, as the dad is absent from his son most of this movie. 2 twin sisters, with one of them is very mischievous enough to the point where she ends up being on the naughty list. And this group of children who end up spending Christmas alone because their parents are caught in the blizzard that takes place. While I'm not a huge fan of movies that have several plot points going on during the runtime, this one actually does work, since you see how everyone's emotions are at stake during the holidays. This is surprisingly quite charming. It's definitely not as impactful as films like Klaus or Arthur Christmas, but it has its own rhythm. I like the bond between this boy and his stubborn teacher who get to know each other pretty well and understand the hardships they go through during the holidays. I like the relationship between the sisters, and how the good one tries to steer her sister away from being mischievous, and the other doing these things in order to try to cheer her sister up. However, I'm not a huge fan of this girl. If you want boomer writers to try to write a Gen Alpha character in their story and fail miserably, you have Bernadette.
Jesus! Oh God. Was a cool dude. A beard, long hair, into woodwork, a hipster basically.
Oh my god, shut up, 1,000,000 times shut up, I'm going to kill you.
I get sticking to normal Christmas traditions can be a bit tiring, but oh boy, Bernie's traditions are very modern. Hey, I'm all for changing the formula and showing more modern and woke ideas to the mix, but I don't need that wokeness shoved down my throat.
He'd want a strictly vegetarian, multicultural fun fest with lots of pop songs and stuff about climate change.
I like it, but not a lot. I don't like it.
Even if the film does look cheap in comparison to other films here, I think the storyline here is pretty good, even if there are some cringe moments here. I think this is a nice little cozy Christmas movie.
Woman shocked to find a chicken snuck into her house and was riding around on a Roomba.
French animation still seems to be vastly underrated, and Chicken for Linda serves that on a silver platter. This French film seems simple on the surface, aesthetically and thematically, but it's much more than that. Mom tries to cook a special chicken dish for her daughter, even though I think the child is a brat, and needing the crucial ingredient goes off to a wild chicken chase. Every character becomes invested in the chicken dinner, from the sister of the mom who tries to stop them from causing more havoc, this police officer who just happens to be in the worst luck possible, this truck driver who immediately falls in love with the mother. It doesn't feel forced either. Each character flows in naturally, and they each give a specific color to them as well. It's very vibrant and it shows how food can bring characters together, whether good or bad. Not to mention, this film ties in its message of grief perfectly. Since the family has lost the husband of the household, making this special chicken dinner is in remembrance of him, since this is his signature dish. It's good for the soul, it's very heartfelt but never too sappy. The visuals just pop off with its simple 2D style. It is a bit lower for me though, as the film does go by pretty quickly and the story is very simple, but I would like to still recommend it to anyone who wants to watch animation outside of the US.
You know, it'd be cool is if we told my story with Lego pieces.
I've already given my thoughts on this Pharrell documentary, but for the many of you who haven't seen that, I quite enjoy this film. I like the use of Legos being told throughout this documentary that will be sure to leave you happy, no pun intended, as Pharrell really gives his vision on telling his life story throughout these building blocks. Also, it's just nice to see another Lego movie back in theaters, since it's been 5 years now since the previous one. Also, about 2 to 3 years since we got another animated documentary, the last one being Flea. Plus, I've been a fan of Pharrell's music for a while now, so obviously this was a movie I was hyped to see. And yeah, I think it's pretty good. The movie just oozes confidence and the visual approach here is amazing. I'm still impressed with how the medium of Lego just works for this film. Every cameo is spectacular, especially Kendrick Lamar after his big year, and of course Daft Punk. The documentary probably isn't going to be as captivating as others out there, but it gets the job done by exploring Pharrell's inventive mind as a singer, producer, and creative mind. Going through his childhood to having his own child, the Lego style perfectly encapsulates everything Pharrell has his mindset to. Also, the main theme by Pharrell here is also a banger. It might not be devious like the song he did for Despicable Me 4, Drake must be shaking his boots right now, but it's still quite catchy and fits the documentary perfectly.
Now put that thing back where it came from, or so help me!
Not as long as we have our imagination.
The second 2023 film that crossed over on this list, we have The Imaginary, a very heavily Studio Ghibli inspired movie, with a concept around imaginary friends dying. Like one's imagination, the animation is boundless. The creativity of this world and the characters that inhabit it are extraordinary. I also like the plot here too. Roger is an imaginary who is starting to disappear after his creator is in a coma, and tries to stay alive by going to a sanctuary where previous imaginaries are protected. Like I said, this is very Ghibli inspired, with whimsical characters like this hippo and this girl named Emily who have endearing personalities. You even get the typical Ghibli villain like this Bunting character, an imaginary himself who tries to get rid of Roger. Even the whole climax of this film, where Roger's creator starts having an imagination battle against Bunting, is very creative and clever. I don't know what else to say. This is a very visually splendid anime that has a lot of emotion, and I'm sure tons of people from children to adults can resonate with this, and will easily get swept up in the glory and captivity of this film.
Hi everyone, my name's Jim, and I have a fear of apologies. Sorry?
You know, releasing at the same time around The Tiger's Apprentice, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people also forgot about this, since it also got swept under the rug despite good reception. Or maybe it's just the sudden hatred of Doom Syndicate coming out around the same time as well. Honestly, even though this was a collaboration with Netflix, this DreamWorks movie does stand out from previous installments. For one, Charlie Kaufman wrote the screenplay for this film, being his second animated screenplay, the first being Anomalisa. Funny, going from an adult-oriented animation to this was not on my bingo card. Based on the picture book of the same name, the narrative is never straightforward, and themes work very well here. Everyone has had some sort of fears in their life and how to overcome them. Meanwhile, I keep reliving the fear of the utter disappointment of my parents, and my sheer unwillingness to try to make any new friends out of my comfort zone. So yeah, I relate to this 12-year-old kid. Our protagonist Orion is a very neurotic kid. He's way too young to have a midlife crisis though, they don't explore that in this film. But he does have a fear of the dark, as we have all had as a kid. Look, that's pretty normal for kids to have. I've had a fear of the Simpsons episode Homer at the Bat with Ken Griffey Jr. suffering from gigantism. That big forehead still haunts my dreams. But yeah, Orion has a hard time trying to overcome his fear of the dark when literally Dark himself shows up and takes him on a road trip to show he's not that scary. The humor is endlessly inventive. I think Orion and Dark play off each other well when discovering irrational fears, and the other night entities are pretty enjoyable too. I like Sleep. Her methods of putting people to bed is pretty hilarious. While placed pretty much in the dark most of the movie, it doesn't shy away from bringing out vibrant colors at night as well. Honestly, this would be a lot higher on the list if it wasn't for a certain part in the story. For some ungodly reason, the story tends to fast forward for a bit with an adult Orion talking to his daughter about his overcoming of the dark, which I guess makes this whole story irrelevant then, if it's just a way to get his kid to overcome her fears as well. So, Dark and the others don't actually exist then. That kinda makes me lose interest in the characters now, since they're not technically real. And yes, I know I'm overanalyzing a film made for kids, but like, hear me out. The whole chunk of the movie feels like a fever dream with Orion and the night entity, since it doesn't actually happen, and adult Orion is just making this up on the spot. Then, his daughter decides to insert herself in the narrative and tries to save Kid Orion and the world from pure bright daylight. Then when that's all done, some random time travel kid from the future named, Tycho, gets in the story to bring the daughter back to her time, and then the story ends with the daughter now grown up and telling this story to her son named, you guessed it, Tycho, while Orion is now an old geezer in their home with his wife listening in on the story. And then it just cuts back to Kid Orion and his since then girlfriend in the planetarium Happy. So was all that stuff in Orion's past then true? How did he overcome his fears? Does Dark as an entity even exist? How did Orion get the girl? Why should I care about Tycho? Whew, okay, I think I've ran it for too long here. Look, besides the weird narrative hopping and time travel sequences, if you just look at the root of the story and only focus on the relationship between Orion and Dark, then I think you'll enjoy this film a lot more than I do. Boy, all this talk makes me want to watch some Simpsons for some reason. Let's see what episode is on. Oh no, they brought him back, no!
It's okay, Ren. Lots of people make cartoons that can't draw.
Honestly, with so many heart-wrenching films out there, this is stacked up there as some of the best. With only about 50 minutes of runtime, Look Back still takes every minute to emotionally hook you in. When student Fujino realizes she has to share space for a new comic panel on the school newspaper, she immediately gets jealous of the new student's ability to draw. Since this student is recluse at home, Fujino is tasked to give her diploma to her, and the new student, named Kiyomoto, is excited to finally meet her manga partner. And the rest is history. This film is basically for anyone with that creative itch, that burning desire to do something they like doing. The friendship between these two is so wholesome and it becomes more devastating at the end. It is a straightforward story, but really dwells on the struggles of artists and how to overcome those personal demons. I urge you to not cry after finishing this movie, it will wreck you. A bittersweet story of friendship, regret, and creative drive.
I like this one.
For someone who isn't a huge Transformers fan and only knows like most popular characters, Transformers 1 was honestly the best reintroduction for me to get into the franchise. This movie is electrifying with every frame. I now understand the hype of OG Transformers fans. For every bad live action movie you guys had to sit through in hopes that one of them will stand out, I'm glad you're finally happy with a stellar animated one. It's such an engaging and believable origin story between Optimus Prime and Megatron. Most people who know these characters will know what happens to their friendship, but the movie pulls no punches of making this predictable, because it's not. Seeing their longtime friendship slip away is so heartbreaking, and it makes for some memorable scenes and dialogue in the movie. You cannot tell me the way Megatron lets Optimus fall while saying,
"I'm done saving you,"
is so menacing. Gosh, Megatron in general is a menace, and the best character here. You understand his motives and why he turns bad, and the performance of Brian Tyree Henry is top-notch. Heck, everyone's performance was good. Chris Hemsworth as Optimus, Scarlett Johansson as Alita, even Keegan-Michael Key as Bumblebee. Steve Buscemi as Starscream is such perfect casting. It feels like a common philosopher's tale, but with robots. This is such a perfect origin story for all these characters, and I can't wait to see what unfolds after they turn their opposite paths. please, if you haven't seen this movie yet, give it a chance. People who grew up with the toys will resonate with this movie. The film will awaken your inner child, but it can also be surprisingly adult. It's such a breath of fresh air for a Transformers movie, and that's saying something.
I'm joy.
I'm sadness.
I'm anger.
I'm disgust.
I'm poo.
We made it, the highest grossing animated movie of all time. And it's decent. Okay, sorry, it's a very good movie, but now I'm just concerned that Pixar is going to use this as a means to only focus on sequels from now on. Curse you, Pete Doctor.
I will hit you on his behalf.
As much as I yearn for original stories, some cinematic worlds should be expanded upon, and I do think Pixar played it straight by tinkering with Inside Out. Riley's story should continue after her pre-teen years, so there is so much to be explored here. I do think showing more of the original 5 was good here. The first movie really established the relationship between joy and sadness, so I'm glad fear, anger, and disgust got to shine a lot more here too. The other new emotions were a welcome addition too, especially anxiety. Everyone struck a chord with anxiety. Maya Hawke's performance is as great as she really showed the jury nature of this complex character. And yeah, that pure panic scene is very good. Anxiety is the personification of 2024, even in the real world. This movie has a mix of humor, honesty, and limitless creativity. If I could get one complaint, this movie pulls no punches of slowing down. It likes to keep moving with the plot, but I wish it would take a breather for just a sec. Geez, I think this movie's plot has a bit of anxiety, rushing to every new scene and character. It's just too much. I also wish the other emotions got fleshed out a little bit more. I think the closest we got was probably embarrassment, going against anxiety's plan and helping out the other emotions protecting Riley. Overall though, this is a nice addition to the Inside Out franchise. I just hope Pixar knows what they're doing with this whole sequel shtick they're using, and maybe going to throw in some original ideas in the future, just for us diehard fans.
A roll of tape? A rubber duck? No time!
Nice.
Power Rangers!
This is by far the most underrated movie on this list. I like this more than Inside Out 2. What? This is probably the same scenario I have with Transformers, as I know who Ultraman is, but never really got into him and his franchise. But, oh man, did this movie really show me how amazing Ultraman is. First off, who doesn't love kaiju battles? The basic formula of Ultraman is taking down tons of gigantic monsters in his town. But this time, our hero has to babysit a newborn kaiju named Emmy, and my goodness, their relationship is just so wholesome. Emmy wins cutest animated character here. Also, this Ultraman is the son of the original Ultraman, who now has to take on the responsibilities as the new hero, with his dad to guide him through. Apparently his dad happens to be a second origin version of Ultraman, as he is an alien who decided to take on his human form, which allows his son Ken to go Ultra since it's in his DNA. I mean, this is probably really confusing to people who aren't aware of this character, but man, I ate up everything in this movie. I will admit, Act 1 was really a downer. Ken does come off as a jerk sometimes before getting the hang of his new abilities. And yeah, while the relationship between him and Emmy is very cute, there are a few instances where he's just a little too mean to her in the beginning. But hey, I still quite enjoy this film. A lot. Sometimes a film doesn't have to be emotionally gripping, and you can just be a fun superhero action movie. Kaiju, robots, superheroes, and baseball, what's not to like?
White Shadow.
I can still see you.
It's been 15 years since Mary and Max, but I'm glad Adam Elliott finally returned for his second full-length feature film. One of the few studios to still do stop motion. From Harvey Crumpet to Mary and Max, the director has a signature look to his animated movies. And just like those movies, Memoir of a Snail is really dark in its subject matter. But that's not surprising coming from Adam Elliott here. We see the life of Grace as she goes through her story of hope over despair with many obstacles in her path. Getting bullied for her premature cleft lip, getting separated from her twin brother as both parents pass away, her obsession to buy anything snail related after finding no connections or passions in her life. The ideas of snails are what drives her, but also becomes her downfall, as her mother used to collect snails and has been clinging onto that memory to a point where her hoarding consumes her. The side characters here are just as important too. Pinky is Grace's only friend and really has an inspiration to her. Pinky's personification shows the silver linings in life, despite the misfortunes that come. She ends up becoming Grace's foster mother, and both tend to care for each other in their times of need. Then there's Gilbert, Grace's twin brother. Being separated and raised in a strict religious family who abuses and torments him, Gilbert tries every way he can to leave and visit Grace. Honestly, his whole story is truly sad to watch, and you want him to leave from the utter suffering he goes through. It's depressingly funny, meekly whimsical, and deeply personal. Forming the cycle of loss and abuse and how to escape it, both Grace and Gilbert show empathy, laughing and crying through their pain and personal struggles, but they also inspire you when watching moments that feel earned. There's more going on underneath the shell. The snail shell, that is. This is a very sad movie, sometimes unsettling at times. The tone switches between funny and sad, but in the end, with the mind of Adam Elliott, he knows how to craft a perfect stop-motion film, and a deft, heartfelt tale about trying to bring two people together.
Meow. Meow.
With zero dialogue, this film is a masterclass in visual storytelling. In a naturalistic environment that looks like our world but more mystical, a stray black cat walks alone until a flood emerges the land, and the cat goes on a boat with other animal castaways. What an absolutely stunning and breathtaking movie. With no dialogue, this movie flow still manages to be tense, emotional, and impactful with every scene. And did I mention it's breathtaking? Like I said, any movie that allows the visuals to do the talking is already a triumphant feat with no words said. And yeah, while it may center around cute animals, specifically our titular cat friend here, it still ends up being really mature and definitely leaves you guessing what's going to happen next. I honestly thought this was a trailer to a video game, with its stylized look, but it wasn't, and this cost $3.5 million to make. That's impressive, and it all being made on Blender is truly something.
It's enough to make a grown man cry. And that's okay.
Look, not everyone will like this film. You know, if you need the plot to be spoon-fed to you, and want your celebrity voice acting in there. But for the true animation OGs out there, you'll definitely be captivated by the artistry given here. Films like these only come around ever so often, so please absorb every aspect of this film as you possibly can. It's such a gravity-defying experience. It's easy to follow through, with the animals being a found family and see each other as a pack. I really enjoy the scene of the cat in the water trying to catch fish for their friends. It's so beautiful and irresistible how the ocean of fish looks. I like the cold atmosphere when the cat and bird are on top of these stone pillars. These moments just feel special with no words given, just pure artistry. And don't even take my word for it, even Moist Critical himself claimed this to be in his top 5 this year. And yet, it's only number 2 for me.
Congratulations!
It was close, with this or Flow taking the top spot. But I mean, this is a huge win for DreamWorks, even after a rough first start of 2024. Already one of DreamWorks' best ever films, and I'm glad they went out with a bang. Sure, I still wish this had no dialogue, but man, it. The casting here was solid, the animation style is beyond phenomenal. I've been absorbed with every little minute detail of this film.
Down to the last minute details.
Few films give us parenting and technology, but none strike a balance like this film. The Wild Robot shows cutting-edge animation and the warmth of the illustrations that inspired it. The voice acting is at the root of the film's humanity, especially as Roz, a new favorite for animated robots. I love the dynamic between Roz and her goose baby Brightbill. The relationship they have leaves such an impact on the film, even getting rid of the liar reveal of Roz not being his parent very early on. Fink is such a good character to play off, as he heavily relies on Roz in keeping him safe, and also shows some compassion to Brightbill as well. But I think the best scene here is the snowstorm where Roz and Fink try to bring in every animal in their shelter, and the animals all agree to bring peace in order for Roz to reawaken from her power outage. It's a tiny reflection of our society. If animals and robots can understand the vicious world we live in, humans should too, and I think that's what makes this such a masterpiece. You know, along with the incredible casting, immersive animation, and rich storytelling. Who knows where DreamWorks is headed, now that their in-studio days are over. But wherever they're headed, this is definitely an end of an era for DreamWorks, and they ended it with style. And that's it. I know I didn't hit every major animated film out there, but I mean, come on, that would take up too much time to go over everything. I know Wallace and Gromit just dropped their newest movie on Netflix, so maybe a quick review on that? We'll see. Boy, I'm just so tired trying to put all of this together, but it was worth it. Really hope you enjoyed the video. It's hard to balance work and my free time into making this, so any support will be appreciated. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.